Every week,
Welcome,
these
Lisa.
sessions are recorded so that we can throw them up online. So we are going to spend a little bit of time today talking about, where you are. Always be able to talk about the things that should be happening, could be happening this week. Talk about the artifacts that are reflective of not only what you've done this week, but what you've done all the way through your program, and then always take that look ahead to talk about the types of things that should be happening as we move forward. Wow, can't believe that we are at week 4, the midpoint of week 4. There are only 2 more regular weeks to go. And then this summer will be over. Time has flown by. But one thing that we will always say here is that everything that you do has to be done with a level of intentionality, right? We want to make sure that no matter what week it is, whether it's week 1 or week 4, you are still being really intentional in all of the things that you do for your young people, especially as programming starts to wind down. You want to be more intentional in these weeks so that your young people really start to understand and have a real organic way of experiencing programming. So all of that requires you to have made some real clear decisions about the way in which program is being structured. All right. So as we move through this week, the big thing is to really, as I said, we're looking at at kind of like what's going to happen, making sure that every young person is being engaged, and a couple of clear things that this week should start to emerge with your young people in program is that they're really starting from an outcomes perspective to have a clear ability to refine the decision-making skills that they've been working on all summer. So when you think about the types of outcomes that you're looking for, here's one that certainly in week 4, you should be able to point to. And your young people should be able to talk about the way that they've made some choices about some things. And one of the clear ways that they've made choices, which is another outcome that your young people should be able to talk to during week 4, is this ability to collect and share information from reliable sources. We know that for the last few weeks, your young people have been doing a bunch of things that are connected to research, that are connected to questioning, and that you've been talking to them about this notion of, not just getting information, but making sure that the information that they get comes from a reliable source. So we want to make sure that this week you're really clear, you're really intentional about identifying that your young people could be able to do these things. And again, along with a host of other things that you're having them learn, but these are 2 outcomes of your programming that really begin to show up in week 4. Any questions about that so far? Does this make sense?
Give us an emoji. Let us know that y'all are live. Give us something in the chat. Thumbs up, something. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you. Lisa, I saw you on mute. Yep.
Oh, no, I was just going to say no questions so far.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. So just to keep it pushing, right? Like one of the things that we want to talk about and make sure that you're thinking about is that as programming starts to come to this real like midpoint, but you're really kind of rounding the bend and starting to close out, that you are still prioritizing the relationships that exist in your program, because PBL is all about relationships.
Yep.
Project-based learning requires your young people to do things together. Yes, there's a portion of the time that they may be doing things alone, asynchronously, but at the heart of project-based learning is them, young people, working with you, working with each other. And a clear element that you need to start to think about right now, week 4, that they've been building all of these relationships, is that in roughly 2 weeks, programming is going to end.
Yep.
And you need to think about, what are you going to do to help young people not only recognize the relationships that they forged, but really think about, okay, how are those relationships going to transition? Like, you know, I've been working maybe intensely online, talking to people 3-4 times a week, you know, for the last 6 weeks. And now I really need to start thinking about what's that going to look like when I'm not talking to them regularly.
Yep.
So that programming gets a real good way of kind of putting a bow on itself, and that those relationships get to transition.
Yeah. And you guys got to remember, like some of our young people are not only young people, some of our staff members too, aren't good at closing out relationships. They're not good at ending relationships. So we really got to start to give that thought. Like, how are we going to close this all out? Welcome, Valerie.
Right?
Thank you.
So we want to make sure in this process that, as with everything else, you know, you're still connecting the stages of your PBL, right? Engagement is going to happen all the time, but right now you are really lining up the continued inquiry, making sure that your young people are exploring, and then that they are also getting ready to take action. Now, taking action, we'll dive into a little bit more in a few minutes, but this notion of sustained inquiry and connecting it to public product is where you need to really begin to, if you haven't already, really tie things together, because that's what they're going to talk about. Now, remember, the journey is as much a part of this public product as whatever it is they're going to talk about, right? It's not just about a question. It's not just about a theme. It's about all the things that they've done. So you want to make sure that you're connecting the dot to everything. Like, what was engagement like? What was inquiry like? Remember, in these last few weeks, they really are refining their decision-making skills. They're understanding about concrete and reliable sources of information. And all of that is going to go into that public product. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So that leads us to this notion of artifact collection. And if you've been around us in any way, you know that we talk about artifacts, you know, really as those things that really help us tell a story, right? And tell a story sometimes when we're not there to talk. So the types of things that you want to be able to collect are not just things that are about the public product, but are about your project-based learning program in and of itself. So whatever you've been doing intentionally all summer long, there should be evidence, there should be artifacts that can be used in your public product to tell the story. So we want to make sure that you're thinking about that, so that next week, as things start to wind down, I know some of you are really at that in your mind closing stage. You really are looking back at your program plans, looking back at all of the things that you've done, and made sure that your young people have artifacts that are connected to everything. If you've been doing team building, if you've been doing huddling up, or if you've been doing surveying, whatever that process was. I'm sorry, Mona. So what you said?
I said icebreakers, or whatever it is that you've been doing, you know, PowerPoints, pictures, chart paper, all those different things are artifacts that you should be collecting to show like that journey, not just the end result, but that journey that you've taken. That should be exemplified in all the artifacts for your public product. Does that make sense for you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, any questions around that? Because your artifacts should be showing that whole process of what you've been doing all summer long. All right, a lot of thumbs up.
Does anybody want to talk about any of the artifacts that you have been collecting so far that you feel are really reflective of your journey? Like, what are some of the things that you guys are having your young people save that they can share during their public product?
Personally, I've been trying to get my participants more involved in more activism related assignments. So we've been creating like a lot of like infographics and stuff that they can show to other people to help inform and do things like that.
Nice, nice.
Thank you,
And
Lisa.
thank you, Lisa. And again, like it's really good to make sure that the things that are connected to your public product are super important, but don't forget about all of the other things that you've been doing. Like Mona said, if they've been doing icebreakers, if they've been doing team building things, you should have artifacts that are reflective of that.
Right.
Oh, and I just remembered something else you want to make sure you've got. Those resumes that you need to have in your portfolios at the end of the summer are artifacts. So make sure that you're putting those things in there as well. The survey that they need to complete, artifact. Does that make sense to everybody? Don't wait till the last minute and then you look up and you've got to put something. All of those things are artifacts of their participation.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
And remember that you can think outside of the box too when you're thinking about artifacts. It doesn't have to, everything doesn't have to be streamlined. Think about all the different things that got you the way you are. Excuse me.
Don't be choking over here on me now. We gotta finish this out strong, partner. All right. So while Mona composes herself, go get some water. We want to make sure that everybody kind of gets their needs met, including Mona, so she ain't over there passing out on me. So as we continue on this journey, we talk a lot about the website, right? Like we talk about the types of things that you could find on the website. So we want to make sure that you guys are aware that on the website, there's this journey that really does allow you to have a bunch of other resources, specifically the portfolio workbooks for your young people. So remember, if you look at a portfolio step and you think, oh, I'm missing an artifact, always go onto the website, pull out the inside their portfolio an activity that they could do asynchronously that would allow you to have them have an artifact that is associated with this week in program. So again, if you're at that point where you're trying to figure it all out, there are tons of activities that are on the website that you could use to help you document the process. Documenting the process is as much a part of this as everything else. So don't be afraid to use the website to go in, pull out some additional activities, give them to your young people, let them complete it and let them give it back to you so you could pull it in their portfolio. So at the end of the summer, when it is time to pull that public product together, not only will they be able to talk about, as Lisa said, what the activism that they're doing, but they'll also be able to talk about the team building. They'll also be able to talk about how they made decisions. They'll be able to talk about how they found reliable sources of information. All of that needs to show up inside their portfolio, and therefore you need good artifacts. And the website is a great place for you to find that information. Any questions? Oh, what a talkative group we have today. All right, so I'm gonna keep it moving, right? So as we're looking ahead to next week, guys, like we said in the beginning, it's starting to happen. Many of you are going to be doing your dry runs of your public presentations. So in that practice, next week is really about young people being able to give and receive feedback, right? So this week, an outcome of your programming is also connected to that, making sure that they know how to talk to each other, not only about the things that work, but the things that might need to be kind of critiqued along the way so that you can connect the dot to the decisions that they make. So we want to make sure that all of the things that you're doing as they begin to figure out what's going to happen in their public presentations that are connected to the end of the program, everybody has a good way of sharing. So of course, when we talk about those presentations, one of the things that you know you're going to have your arms around is this notion of taking action.
Mhm.
What are the young people going to do? PBL requires at the end of the exploration that the young people do something with what they've learned.
Mhm.
Now, they don't have to have an answer to the burning question. They don't have to have a finalized thought around the theme, but they do need to do something with all of the work that's connected to the journey. And that lives in that taking action space. PBL is not complete unless the young person shares what they've learned with an audience. So next week is all about figuring out who's going to be in the audience.
Yeah.
Right? Who are your young people going to present to? Remember, they don't have to present outside of your organization. They don't have to present outside of your program, but they do need to present to somebody.
Mhm.
So your young people with you need to start thinking about who's going to make up that audience.
Yeah.
Have you guys started thinking about who your presentations, who the young people are going to talk to so far?
Anyone?
Give us some feedback on who you intend on having your young people present to. I know y'all here.
Has anyone started to think about that with their young people?
Now, if this is payback because this is what they do to y'all, I feel you.
We have in the chat, like Suzanne says, that she's going to have them present to other PBL facilitators and all other participants in PBL programs. Lisa says they haven't started thinking about that. Nadia hasn't started thinking about that as well. It's important that you guys start thinking about the audience. Is it going to be family members? Is it going to be their peers? Lisa says, you know, she's going to start thinking about that now, but it's important because like Dennis said, it's not the fact that it has to be that they have the answer to the burning question, but the fact that they have a question and the process of how they got to that question is something that needs to be presented. That public product really needs to connect the dots as to what they learned throughout their summer, right? And how they got to learning what they learned this summer, how they started to research, how they have figured out like what is a reliable source, right? All those different things, all those dots need to be connected, right? And it needs to have artifacts to show how they connected all the dots. Like your kids are learning how to research, how to find reliable sources, what's reliable from what's not reliable. And these are all skills that they're learning. And they need to realize that they learn these skills in your program.
And is it Iris? How do you say your name? Miss Perez?
Ms. Perez, it's Iris?
You can enunciate. You could put it in the chat, but just saying that she mentioned the notion of parents and local community as well as other interns or who our young people will be. Oh, you're gonna unmute. Yay! We're gonna hear another voice.
Yeah, sorry, I'm supervising one of our classes, one of our internships, and it's a dance one, so they're pretty loud in there. But yeah, we were thinking we usually present, like we invite parents and they present to other interns.
Nice.
So it's
nice.
more like a celebration, and we come up with a schedule. We usually like do like 2 days where we're like sharings, and we schedule them so they don't overlap, and other interns can see what the other interns have been up to and get to see like and celebrate each other's work.
Perfect. Now, one thing we want to remind everybody, you alone shouldn't be thinking about who the audience is. Your young people should be contributing to who the audience is. And not only should they be contributing, they should be inviting, right? Because again, a big part of this is that ability to sort of like make that decision, that ability to know where they get information from. So if you're talking about who the audience is, your young people should certainly be front and center in making that decision with you. It's a great opportunity for them to kind of, you know, continue to exercise this notion of voice and this notion of choice. So really talking about who's going to be in the audience is a great way for you to infuse a little more youth voice and choice into the process. And that, of course, is directly connected to the types of things that they've been learning, right? So because they've been talking about careers, because they've been talking about the education that they need, or the skills that come out of this, or visions and values and goals that are connected to the work, all of the individuals that are connected to this type of exploration that you've been doing are the people that could come to their final presentation. So think about that as well, right? Like, who are the individuals that have been supporting them throughout? And then if there are parallels in their everyday life, they again should be able to really invite those individuals to come in and see and hear and experience what they've done throughout the course of the summer. That makes sense? Excellent, excellent. So one thing that we want to be always thinking about in this process is like, this PBL is about making sure that young people are developing skills. And the types of skills that they're developing are connected to them not only being able to get a job, but being able to keep that job. When you look here, you see so many things that are reflective of things that we know. We know people, we have colleagues who can't do stuff like this, right? Like they can't include other people in the types of things that they've been doing. It has to be their way or the highway. We know that we work with people at times who can't bring people together, who really don't know how to listen to other people, and can't have this notion of being seen as a role model or be able to motivate somebody else to do something. You know, these things that have traditionally been called soft skills are the types of things that young people can learn through a PBL process. And not only can they learn them, we know they have been learning them with you. So what we want to make sure is that when you're creating these final presentations, your young people should also be able to speak to the types of things like this that they've done in program, that again speak to attitudes and skills that are connected to the work that they've done with you. So make sure in that final presentation, your young people can talk about stuff like that as well. Because as I said in the beginning, this isn't just about the public product, right? It's not just about whatever medium that they chose. It's all the things that they've done over the course of the summer. That's what we want to celebrate. Make sense? All right. And then how have they done it, right? Your young people have been really, really taking on meaningful roles in program, in a community where you've been able to help them get additional influence. And as they get additional influence on the world around them, you know, that really does give them an opportunity to learn more. And the more that the young people learn about being leaders, the greater the opportunity it is for them to do other things, right? In the beginning, a lot of your programming centered around tasks, right? Maybe there was some community service that your young people have done. But now many young people in the program are at a point where, because they kind of know what's going on, they can give you some input, right? They can be consulted about things that could work, things that you could do. Some organizations use this time to start to think about next year, right? Like we met with a group earlier this week that really allows young people who are 14 and 15 to talk about next year's themes and allow them to begin the PBL thought process of what these might be from within the group. So having that level of input and consultation opportunity allows young people to really experience influence. And then finally, because we're talking about programming, there's no greater opportunity to influence something than a young person being able to share leadership with you. When a young person is able to work with you to make decisions about the types of things that are going to happen, that's the highest form of participation in an after school and any type of a youth serving program, because the young person is actually helping make a decision that's going to impact their lives in your program. This makes sense? Excellent. All right. So from a content perspective, that's really what we have for you today. What we asked you to do is like, take a moment, like reflect on some of the things that are going on, you know, talk a little bit about, you know, what your programs are doing, because one of the biggest things that are going to start to happen, as we said in the beginning, over the next few weeks, that you're starting to point to those outcomes. And the outcomes that your young people should be able to talk about, both this week and next week, have everything to do with giving and receiving feedback.
Mhm.
Right? Your young people should be able to talk to you about what is going on in program, what's going on in the public product, and you should be able to give them feedback around their participation. And again, this give and take opportunity should really, really be highlighted over the next few weeks. It is directly connected to your young people being able to reflect on the process. Like when we talk about reflection, we're doing this now. We're talking about all the things that are going on in your program. Your young people should be able to do the same. You should be able to talk about what made us be able to work together, whereas maybe on the first day in the first week, nah, we couldn't do that. What happened? What did we do that allows us to be able to do the types of things that we could do together now?
Mhm.
Your young people should be able to talk about how they collect and share information. And here's the thing, from reliable sources. Done right, what PBL has also done is help your young people begin to understand, I can't just take in information from anywhere,
Mhm.
right? Like we all know, most of our young people, where they get their information from. Where do you guys think your young people get their information from?
Social media.
Social media,
Where else?
Friends.
There you go.
friends.
Mhm.
Excellent. Where else?
TV, Iris said.
Right. But they get it from TV.
Wikipedia, Suzanne said.
Exactly. So what we're trying to also be able to connect the dot to is not just that they get information, but they begin to understand whether or not the information that they're receiving from those places is reliable.
Mhm.
A lot of times all the sources that you mentioned can be unreliable, but your young people need to be able to understand how they find credible information and then use credible information to refine decision making, because they've been making decisions all along, right? We just don't know whether or not the information that they've been using to make that decision is credible. And you are trying to promote, through project-based learning and the exploration of information, that young people can actually make good decisions based on good information. And they can recognize when something is being said to them that is kind of a little bit off, and then understand how to dig a little bit deeper. Even when it comes from a family member, could be a parent, could be a grandparent, because again, like there are things that I know I told my children kind of growing up that now I'm like, oh yeah, that might not have been the right information, right? But again, it was the information that I had. So we want to make sure that our young people understand how to kind of navigate through that process so that they make decisions with good information.
Mhm.
Make sense? All right, any questions? All right. Well, one thing we always say, if you don't have no questions, we don't have no questions, we don't have to be here. So I thank everybody for your time this week. We are super excited about seeing some of your public products. One thing that we also say is that if you're having an event or an activity, we would love to be able to hear about it, promote it. I will say that on August 10th, keep your eyes and ears peeled for an opportunity to see some presentations from some groups virtually. So in the probably next week, we'll be able to give you more information about what groups are going to be doing, and certainly encourage you, whether it's on here, on social media, get your young people to talk about what they've been doing so that other young people can learn from their experiences, can learn from the things that you've done with them, and we can all benefit together.